So let's have some fun with routing information protocol, and let's keep this to a CCNA perspective, shall we? So notice that I've set up Cisco's Viral here to give myself two routers, and we use the unmanaged switch because I don't need to practice any switching in this example. And I had Cisco's Viral do all of the IP addressing for me. And I did tell Viral, of course, not to do any routing protocols because we want to practice with RIP. We have the loopback 192.168.0.1 over here, 0.2 over here. And when we're done with RIP between these devices, our goal would be to be able to ping between them. So let's go to the devices and take a look at this configuration. The RIP protocol does give us some kind of interesting annoyances, but the good news is, as we'll see, there's some pretty easy workarounds for these annoyances. So let me start with a show IP interface brief. And we remind ourselves that Viral for the data network is going to be using this 10x. For its management, it's this 10x. And then, of course, that's the loopback that we mentioned earlier. So now we see one of the challenges with RIP. We're going to go and configure RIP by saying router RIP, but we are very limited in the network statement. For example, I'm going to use this network statement of 10.0.0.0, and that's all I can do. And that's going to get both of these interfaces, even though we don't want gigabit Ethernet 0/0 participating in RIP. So what you will do to work around this is you can say, under the RIP process, passive interface default. So we just made every one of these interfaces passive from a RIP perspective. And now you can say no passive interface gigabit 0/1. And you can explicitly undo that for that interface that we do want running RIP. So I'm also going to, let me just make sure that worked. Yeah, there we go. And I'm also going to do this no passive interface for the loopback 0, the other interface that I want to participate in RIP. Now I can use my network statement and use that classful reference of the 10 dot. And then I can do another one for 192.168.1.0. Whoops, and that is actually 0.0 is what we want to do for that network. So now I will negate the other entry that I have. That is incorrect. There we go. So I had some challenges there. Let me do a show run pipe begin router RIP. So we'll take a look at that configuration and make sure it is just what we want on this device. Boy, my devices are not performing all that well today. All right, so we've got router RIP, passive interface default, no passive for 0/1, no passive for the loopback, and then we've got the correct network statements in there. Great. Well, if you wanted a little review, I've got good news for you. We're about to do that again over on the R2 device. But before we do that, what's missing here? Yeah, what's missing is, from a CCNA perspective, we're always going to be dealing with version 2 of RIP. So I need to specify version 2. And something else that you should consider as a default, whether they tell you to configure it or not, is go ahead and turn off auto summarization. If in doubt, don't auto summarize. All right, so we should be good now to go on that device. Let me go over here to our R2 device and let's do kind of a mirrored configuration. So I'm going to do, and I'll try not to make any mistakes this time, router RIP. I'm going to do version 2. I'm going to do my no auto. I'm going to do passive interface default. There we go. No passive, and it's going to be gigabit 0/1, and then no passive loopback 0, and then it's going to be our network statements. And that looks great. Now, The other frustration with RIP is that it doesn't form adjacencies that we can verify like more sophisticated protocols like EIGRP, OSPF. So the challenge is, verification. Now, yes, you could do debug IP RIP. This is one of those rare times where you'd even consider a debug command. And notice we're sending updates and we're receiving updates. Well, that's a really good sign. So let me turn off the debug. And my ultimate verification here is going to be to do a show IP route RIP, because we want to look in the routing table and see if we're learning of that remote loopback IP address, and we are. And can we ping it? 192.168.0.1. Whoops, it would help if I typed that correctly. There we go, 192.168.0.1, and we can ping it. So our RIP configuration was successful. There was some kind of annoyances, as I stated, with RIP that we were able to work around in this configuration, and that is by far a CCNA level understanding of the configuration, verification, and troubleshooting of RIP that I would like you to know. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great rest of the day.